Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Mike Ames Recruitment Show, where, as you can see, we're talking about one of Mike's favourite topics today, which is the big debate, 360 versus a layered model, the pros and cons of both the models debated so that you can choose the best one for you. Now, to do this today, obviously, we've got Mike, who cannot help himself, but we also have our guest, Max, today. Hi, Max, how you doing?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to this.
It's an absolute pleasure. We're all looking forward to this. And Mike, can you just explain a little bit about why you have asked Max to be our guest for this particular show?
Yes, well, two reasons really. One is he said yes when I asked him, which is why he's on the show. But
everybody else said no.
Other people whose first name is Alex didn't come on the show when he was asked. Let's leave it at that. I think this is a great debate to have because it's perennial conversation. People go down the 360 route and then discover that it's not perhaps what they thought it was. Then they kind of swerve over to the layered, but perhaps don't think that works for them, and they swing back, or they're not sure what to do. So I think to have a debate where we look at the pros and cons of both and discuss it. And I know we're going to agree on some things, actually, and I know we're going to disagree on some things, which is the point of a debate, isn't it, I suppose? I thought was important. And Max had put it was a post, wasn't it, Max? I think you put out.
Yeah, that's right. Just
around this debate. Yeah, around this debate, and I commented on it, and he commented back, and we had a little conversation. And I just thought, well, I had to send him a message, say, would you come on and talk about it? And he said, yeah, I absolutely will. So here he is. So let me just formally introduce Max, if I can. Mm-hmm. So Max Learmonth is founder and CEO of Forge Talent. Have I got that right?
You have, my friend. You have.
Yeah. 12-month-old business, gone from zero to £1 million in fees, 5 or 6 people, really good growth in the finance and accounting arena, I think. And then before that, 12 years in various corporate positions and SME businesses. So that's your story. Have I got that about right, Max?
Absolutely spot on, Mike. Yep.
Okay, fantastic. Great. So as always, as we go through, guys, if you have any comments or questions, feel free to pop them in. We have already had one. Our favourite Gavin has already clearly picked a side. I can't help but feel. But as we go through, guys, if you want to bring up anything to either Max or Mike, then just let me know and I will bring it up.
I'd like you to put whether you're a 360 fan, a layered fan, or not really sure, uncertain. I'd like to put that in the comments. That'd be groovy if you've got time.
Okay, fantastic. So, Mike, to begin with, so that we're all singing from the same hymn sheet, because obviously you get things like fulfillment and layered and factory model and 360 all thrown in together. Can we just set the scene about what we're doing before we get into the debate?
Yes, I can, very simply, right. So if you've heard the term factory model, revenue factory or recruitment factory, it basically means there's a business with 5 clear components. We call them engines or pillars, but components. There's one focused on the team to make sure you get the right people in and incentivize them, keep them going and train them and develop and so on and so forth. There's one to win high value clients. There's one to look after clients to make you the primary supplier there, the apex supplier. There's one very much focused on marketing, and then there's one on fulfillment. That fulfillment engine could be 360, could be layered, or it could be a mix of the two, which is called blended, right? So what we're debating today is fulfillment, which is one of the 5 engines of a recruitment factory.
Okay, very succinct. Thank you very much. Okay, so I think to start with, we'll have our contenders in each corner kind of do a very brief premise on what they are. So Max, would you just briefly explain to us what 360 is, what you're fighting for on today's match?
Of course. Yeah, of course I will. And look, there's probably two arms to it. So for me, 360 is the way to build true relationships with customers. And those customers are candidates and clients. It's the way to ensure the lights stay on when economies and markets go through a tough time. If you break it down, and I suppose the official explanation from me would be it's the full recruitment life cycle: business development, candidate identification, candidate management, and then the negotiation and placing that candidate with said client.
Okay, fantastic. Very well done. Very succinct. I very much doubt this next one's going to be as succinct, but Michael, would you give us the basis of what a layered model is?
Absolutely delighted. So layered simply means that there are four key stakeholders for recruiters, right? There are prospects, people who want to be clients. There are clients, there are candidates, and then of course there's your team. Okay, so they're the four main stakeholders. And a 360 focuses on candidates, clients, and prospects. That's what they do. So they're winning clients, and then they're finding candidates, and then of course they're trying to place those candidates with their clients. 360 simply means you split those up. Now, there's no absolute way of doing that. You can cut it in lots of different ways. And if we've got another 3 hours, I could explain all of them. But essentially, somebody focuses on clients, somebody focuses on candidates, and then somebody focuses a part of their time for strategic hunting, so hunting high value clients. So it's a myth that in a layered model, people who are focused on clients don't do any BD. They can if they like. It's absolutely fine. It's tactical BD, it's vacancy scraping, it's advert chasing, it's upselling, cross-selling, drop selling, or whatever. It's all of those things. It's absolutely fine. But somebody in a layered model has the responsibility to target and win high value clients. And then gradually, the more of those you win, the less tactical BD that has to be done.
Okay, I think that's fairly fair. Now, let's get into the battle. So to begin with, Max, as you are our guest today, I think you should go first. Can you bring us the biggest pro of a 360 model? And then, Mike, I'm going to let you come back to it.
I think the biggest one, and it's one of the reasons I set up Forge Talent, is our industry, the recruitment industry in general, has become so transactional. It is about sticking a bum on a seat in some businesses, and I would say in a high percentage of businesses. So for me, the main one is around a 360 model is end-to-end relationship building with everybody involved. So it's relationship driven for me.
Well, weirdly.
Oh no.
Yeah, weirdly.
Agree, aren't you?
There's two types of BD, as you probably know. There's tactical BD, which is transactional, basically trying to get a vacancy from wherever so they can work on it. Vacancy focused. There's strategic BD, which is about winning clients, high value clients, right? Before it was called strategic BD, it was called relationship selling back in the day. It's not so trendy to call it that now, but that's what it was. Because all of my businesses, and the two that I've had, and I think you can count probably Flair as well, but Software Knowledge, which we went to naught to, in today's money, 70 million quid in a decade, somewhere in that neck of the woods, all built on relationships. So we had no marketing, we did anything, we just built relationships using the factory model that we talked about now. And the same goes for Crimson, which was a smaller business, 24 million turnover, I guess. But again, it was a relationship-driven business, not quite as much. They had a marketing function in there and various other things as well. So I think that the idea of relationship building is easier done if someone is focused on it, as opposed to in a 360. I'd be interested to see what you say about this, actually, Max. Genuinely, I would. Most 360s that I know are rewarded end of the month or end of the quarter. Tends to be that way. Most of them end of the month, truth be told. And usually there's a high commission element to what they do. So that means their vision, their field of vision, is very much shrunk to the end of the month or the end of the quarter. Because if anything comes outside of that, I'll look at that later. I've got to make some money now. I've got to make some money now. Relationship building is a much longer process, and it can take months or even years to build a relationship with a high value client to where it needs to be. And my contention in these 360s don't have that field of vision. They're interested in the here and now. The very nature of 360 and commission based is transactional. So how would you kind of respond to that?
I think it's funny, we've spoken a couple of times about this previously. I think on that in particular, that comes down to the people that are running the business and the leadership and the management. I think the one thing I'd like to challenge you on within that, if everything is around relationship building, so if I go out there to market, whether it's an out-and-out cold call, whether it's somebody I've been trying to build a relationship with, and I win a piece of business, and then take that back to my layered model or my 180 model and pass that to them, it's far more detrimental to the relationship, in my opinion, if that customer who I've been nurturing and trying to build a relationship with then doesn't get the same level of service that they would from me, because they're bought into me or the person that has been out there trying to develop that relationship and win that business. And essentially, I'm passing the buck as soon as I've got that vacancy. So,
well, now hang on a sec though. We're not talking about chasing vacancies. Vacancy chasing is tactical BD, and anyone can do that. We're talking about high value clients that are very, very high value. And I think that it would be a mistake to say, well, I've won that now, off you go, you have it. Especially since, as the business developer, as the hunter, strategic hunter, and in a company, I mean, we built the first business, 40 million at the time, now 60, 70 million, with 3.5 strategic hunters. Just so as you know, that you don't need too many strategic hunters to fuel a business, right? So if you've got 10 to 15 people, you can have one strategic hunter, probably the owner. It's an hour a day of your time. That's what strategic BD is. It's not very much, right? Whereas tactical BD, you've got to be on the phone emailing all the time to get vacancies in. It's not the same. So if you win a high value client, it's in your interest, because you're going to get paid from it probably for the next year to year and a half, to make sure that the revenue that comes from it is maxed out. If you just let it go, well, good luck to you on that one, because I think that's the recipe for disaster. There's a very much layered handover, that the person that they deal with and see and speak to will be the person they bought into. And the move across to the delivery people is much, much more gradual. And the reason we do it in the first place, you might ask, is that hunters have got a certain frame of mind. They are very much hunters. They're not necessarily carers. It's not in their nature necessarily really good hunters. So
Max, I feel like you have something to say there. Max, come on in.
No, because I actually don't disagree with what Mike's saying, and I think there's going to be a theme there where we both say similar things today. But that's how it should work. And you're talking about particular cases that have worked in businesses that you've been involved in. In my experience, you've had a lot longer career in recruitment than I have never seen it work like that. And I speak to lots of CEOs and founders and lots of owners of other recruitment businesses, and I haven't seen it work like that.
Well, it's down to two things, really. Well, first of all, you got to do it properly. And I'm not just saying that so people will come and use us. You have to do it properly. You have to have done it and understand it and know the weaknesses where it breaks. Because if you don't do that, it's going to fail, right? It has one of its weaknesses. I'm just doing your job for you now, Max. If it's not done properly, it will fail. And it's quite a narrow path. If you get it done properly, it works a treat. Outside of that, it's okay. First of all, you've got to get the management, and we talked about that off air.
Yeah.
An active management in a factory. This has got nothing to do with layered or 360 or blended. In a factory, you need it to be actively managed, just like in a real factory. You have to be able to know what's going on, driven by data, not by proximity. So, and it's the same as well when you're talking about 360s, I think, because you have to understand what's happening now and what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And so if you're not managing that process properly, it won't work. But then I would argue that pretty much the same for 360s actually. But the other thing is the way in which you set up the transfer of power, or the transfer of ownership, I should say, and the movement of money, the commission scheme, is absolutely crucial, because most people follow the money, truth be told, which is why the 360 model, which is as equally flawed, you're bound to admit it, you must have seen a tremendous number of 360 shops, which are awful, really, especially some of the bigger ones. But I think if you don't get the commission right and you don't manage it properly, then you are going to suffer. I think you're right.
Yeah, that's like anything though. People have to be incentivized. They have to be motivated in the right way. They have to have the right leadership. They have to have the right management. All of that has to go into it in layered 360, 180, whatever you want to call it. The other thing I want to ask you a question on then, Mike. So how do you think the customer feels when, or the client, whatever you want to call them, for me, customer is candidate and client, if, again, I've been out there and I've nurtured that relationship and I am passing that to somebody else, they essentially have another point of contact. So do you not feel that will have a detrimental impact from a credibility point of view?
That's a very good question, actually. Max. It's a very good question. So let's break that down. First of all, I think there's a difference between contract and perm.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's the first thing I would say. Most of my life for my own businesses was contract. As a consultant, most of the world that I work in is perm. That's just the way in which it goes. But in contract, you have to build a relationship. Somebody has to build a relationship with the contractors. And we all talk about products for our clients, this product solution thing. Well, you need the same for your contractors. You need to sell them a product, right? Buy into this, and I'll do all of these things that I'm promising for you. And I think so long as they've got somebody who's the squad, it's called the squad, right? So who's managing the squad that can point them towards a job that's relevant to them. Whoever manages the placement is not that much of a bother. It just isn't. If they're professional and they know what they're doing, it's like, yeah, well, okay, let me talk you through the company, let me talk you through the role. Contractors are different. With perm, again, it's a little different because it's very transactional. You don't keep in touch with your perm candidates that much.
I do.
After the placement. Well, and that's probably one of the reasons you've been so successful. Most people don't because they're end of the month focused. Because the other thing is,
but they become, Mike, they become customers though.
They can do if you're placing the right people. I mean, if you're placing factory workers on, whatever it is.
And clearly that's not what I'm placing, right? No. But they become customers. So I've got to nurture that relationship again for down the line.
And you can do that. That's tactical BD. It's candidate and reference and candidate flipping. So when you're talking to a candidate, you can then turn them into a client. There's no problem with that. The commission scheme that we have handles that beautifully. If you as a recruiter flip a candidate, or one of your clients moves from one company to the next, it's fine. You then keep the revenue from that. It's absolutely fine. It doesn't change it at all. So you can still do that. There's no problem with it. I think it's a good thing to do, actually. But broadly speaking, in a typical 360 shop, they're so transactional that they make a placement and move on. And particularly if the people they're placing aren't decision makers, they're not even key influencers. They're just, which is the vast majority of placements, obviously, in this country. So I think to answer the question, the idea that you build a relationship with someone during the course of the recruitment process is true. It starts off, maybe you've got very layered, maybe you've got the matching done offshore, then you've got the filtering done onshore. Someone rings you up and says, well, we've got a vacancy, let me run you through it headline. And if you're interested, then I'll put you in touch with the consultant who's running it. Then you go through to the consultant and they do the placement, right? So they've only got 2 touch points really, because they don't talk to the offshore team. That's all done via email or outreach. So there's only 2 people really. And I don't think it's that much of a bother if the person they speak to outlines the role and say, yeah, I'm interested in that, think I can do it. Well, okay, let me schedule a call with the consultant, and the consultant then will manage it all the way through, obviously, then to the placement. So I don't really think that's a bother. And like you say, if they're a person of interest, person of influence, you can still keep in touch with them moving forward. Most 360s won't, because they're on to the next deal. They should, though.
I do want to kind of interrupt. We've had some comments that I want to bring up, guys. So I'm going to go one of each here. So we've got a Gavin, we know is very pro 360. He said, what Mike said about long-term relationships is valid for 360s who bill 300, 500K plus. Those that are bidding more are definitely looking at the long term. It's only way to secure all the business and be able to go out and look for it even more, which I think it very much relates to what you've been saying.
Sadly, I agree with Gavin.
I agree very much as well. I think the key thing here is this bit, the bill 300 to 500K bit on that. We've had someone else say, I think more in the layered model, that they built most of their business here by being the hunter and passing the account straight over to their colleague. And then they've said it's not really that hard, which I very much enjoy the emoji that's gone with that. I very much enjoy. But I have had a question that is come up from Claire.
Woohoo!
How are the delivery teams set up to enable the success of this approach? When strategic business is passed over to recruiters to deliver to, which is often what happens, accountability is often lacking, which Max, I think, is very much a reinforcement of the point that you said. So Mike, what do you say about this?
Well, she's right, really. If it's done badly, it'll fail. Right, so do it properly is my advice, right? So first of all, you're passing it to people that are managing clients. So there's not a delivery team as such. That's a bit of a myth, really. You're passing it to someone that now manages the client. So it's in their interest to maximize revenue, because normally the full handover of a client from the hunter to the carer is not a period of time or a period of vacancies. It's an amount of money. So when you've delivered this much money from the client, the hunter gets less, and the carer gets more, and so on and so forth, and down it goes. There are differences for search. I won't go into those, but there are differences for search. But if you hand over to someone who's not a proper client carer, they don't understand how to do account management, then you've let yourself down on the training or the way in which people are managed, really, because they should be keen to get them. They should be keen to get them, assimilate them, and make the money on them, so that pretty much all of the money from that client comes to them moving forward. In terms of the people finding candidates, is that a delivery team? I don't know. There's so many different words, aren't there, really? But
probably it's a 180 consultant, or it's a delivery team.
We don't go with the numbers now, because I think there is a lot of confusion. There's basically people focused on candidates. So is that 180?
There's still a lot of people on LinkedIn, Mike, that will call themselves a 180 recruitment consultant.
I know. But it's a bit ambivalent. I don't think people. You talk to one person, it means one thing, and you talk to another, it means something else. Whereas if you break it down into the actual functions, what do you do? Well, I find and qualify candidates. Well, okay, then you're a finder and a qualifier. That's absolutely fine. Not much of a job title there, by the way.
I think as well, because when you do certain things, like, for example, in a search, finding and qualifying the candidates is way more than 180. That would be the majority of what they're doing, essentially, is finding and qualifying. Whereas versus in a typical, normal high street kind of recruitment, it would be a smaller function. So that's why we don't like the numbers so much, is because depending on your industry, those kind of areas, whether it be find, qualify, whatever it would be, take up a massively different part of the grade.
Right. If you've got if basically you've got match, filter, and qualify, really, those are the three stages you go through. You've got to search and match. So you're going to go look on the job boards or LinkedIn or your register or wherever you're going to look, right? Looking for people that seem to match the vacancy that you have. Then you've got that filter where someone speaks to them, and it could be the same person, of course, speaks to them to understand, are they available, are they interested, kind of assess them. And then you've got someone that produces a shortlist. And the 360 does all of those things, and that's absolutely fine. But what that means is a lot of the work that they're doing is something that somebody who gets paid less can do. So the most seminal piece of business advice I was ever given by Anne-Marie Hanlon when she worked with us in the 90s was move everything down to the lowest possible pay grade without sacrificing performance and quality. Because you and I both know how many calls it can make to get through to somebody, and you've got a really experienced client-facing person that should spend most of their time with their clients or doing tactical BD if that's what they want to do. And yet they're ringing people up and leaving messages. It's like, really? Is that the best use of their time? Because I don't think it is. I think the best use of their time is to pick up with people that know what the vacancy is, kind of interested and want to know more, and then you can decide whether you move them forward, because that's an efficient use of time.
Max, do you want to come back to that one?
That latter part that Mike just said, I don't disagree with. I think the bit that I do genuinely struggle with, and by the way, Layered works in loads of businesses. Mike, we spoke about this already. The bit I'm struggling with is having the multiple touch points. I think it can have an impact from an employer brand point of view. I think it can have an impact from a personal brand point of view. And I think it can just harm credibility if they then receive a poor level of service. And that comes back to the management piece is going to be integral in all parts of recruitment. But I think for me personally, the challenge or the hurdle is the touch point piece. Because
let's talk about that then, because I think
one second before we go into that, because I do want to go into it. It's a very exciting time. I'm very looking forward to it. We do have a message from our sponsor.
Oh, do we? Oh,
yeah,
wait.
we do. And we all know who the sponsor is, don't we?
It's me. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So let me just explain what this is about. So we promote our profit and lifestyle summits. They're one-day summits where people who are looking to take their business to the next level, they're not sure whether they want to scale or not, but what they do want to do is make more money and have a better lifestyle. So what we have, Kirsty, if you can bring it up, is a full-day session working on your business. It happens to be tomorrow in Birmingham. It's all full. It's everything. In fact, it's oversubscribed. I just signed someone else up this morning and I shouldn't have done, but there you go. So it's basically made up of those 5 different topics. So strategic business development, what we've just been talking about now, not tactical BD, trying to get vacancies. This is about winning high value clients. Apex client care is the things you need to do to make yourself the prime supplier on site. Zero cost marketing is just that. I don't like spending any money on marketing, and yet we do a tremendous amount of it. And zero cost marketing, in my opinion, is not only the most effective, it certainly gives the best return on investment. Layered fulfillment, we go into not just the next level of what we're talking about today, but the level underneath that down to what job roles look like. And then how to be a sticky employer, how to get more than your fair share of the above average and maybe even overachievers from the bell curve. It's not exactly going to break the bank. The whole day costs 97 quid if you're in Birmingham and Manchester and online, which is coming soon. If you're not in the United Kingdom. In London, it's a bit more expensive because everything's more expensive in London. If you're interested and would like to come to one of these, or you'd just like to know more, because I can send you a page where you can read all about it, you just need to email Summit to mike@flair.co.uk, and I will send you that link that you can take a look at.
Fantastic. So I'm very much looking forward to that. We've had a couple more comments, so guys, keep them coming. Claire has agreed with you. She says that often where it falls over is the handover, and career progression isn't aligned, so that people don't have that handover. And she's also said, agreeing with you, Max, I think that in an agency, every person in the business should have some element of caring about winning new clients and client retention, which threads through the whole business. Now, we have had another question, but I'm just going to let Mike and Max kind of finish the point they started before the sponsor, and then I promise I will bring it up. So just remembering what it was.
Yeah, so my bit was the bit that I would personally struggle with is the impact it can have from an employer brand point of view, personal brand, my credibility, or the business's credibility. If everything we're doing is talking about relationship-driven recruitment, having multiple touch points, in my opinion, dilutes that.
Mike?
Okay, in response to that, I'd say at the lower level, you've only got 2 touch points. If you use someone to do the filtering, if you do someone to basically say, this is the job, are you interested? Probably a bit more than that, right? You've got that layer, and then you've got the next level up where, yeah, okay, now you talk to the consultant. So there's only 2 levels for the candidates, maybe even only 1. If you don't bother with a filter, I would urge you to put a filter in though. Everything down to the lowest possible pay grade. If you're talking the client, again, they only have 2 touch points. And then that's not for tactical clients. You can still win those from the ways that we've suggested. You know, people can ring in. It's absolutely fine. They just get straight through to the client carer and they look after them. There's only 1 touch point. If there's a strategic business developer and they're focused on high value clients, and we know they're high value because we choose them, that's the big difference. Actually, if you come on the summit, I talk about that a lot, how to do that. It's 1 person, probably for the vast majority of recruitment companies, you only have 1 strategic business developer, and it will be part of their job.
And it's normally the owner in our.
Yeah, traditionally the owner, normally it is, yeah. And it's like an hour a day until you get to the stage of doing pitches. Obviously it changes then, but in the early stage, it's about an hour a day. And I've got the numbers associated with that, so you can see where that number came from. So, and their job is to build a relationship, but from the get-go, I'm the person, usually we call them account directors. So I'm the account director, I'll always be here, you can always talk to me, but I'm not the best person to actually manage the process of recruitment because that's not what I do. My job is to set you up with the right person and make sure that happens. And there's usually a 6-month handover period, at least, sometimes longer, depends on how long it takes for the revenue to come through. So there's only 2 touch points at the top and 2 touch points to the bottom. I don't really think that's too much of a problem. When you think at the turnover in 360s, they may have 3 different recruiters in 6 months they have to talk to. You know, because
they could do if the management are getting it completely wrong. They could do. There's no doubt about that. I think something else just that you've touched on there, and I am not saying this to be a controversial arsehole.
Do it.
I'll do it. We like it. Do it.
No, I'm not. So obviously COVID savaged the recruitment industry, like it did. Technology recruiters have just gone through a really, really tough 12 to 18 months. When things get really, really tough, the majority of business leaders and owners revert back to type, and that is a 360 model. And you just need to look at some of the numbers and statistics of how many layered 180 candidate focused recruiters unfortunately lost their jobs during COVID. So we'll no doubt go through another tough time, in the next 5-6 years. It just happens. So because for me, 360, it's not recession proof, but there's more of a fighting chance for you to get your way through. So how can you do that with a layered model?
That's interesting, Mike, because you built 2 of your businesses through
recessions.
That's why I asked the question.
No, that's a fair question. Again, it's a fair question, Max. Thank you for asking that. I think for starters, their layered models are much, much more resilient because you can build outstanding performance. Like we talked about, we've got 2 or 3 examples of quite large clients. When you go down to clients, there's even more of people that reduce their headcount by up to 50%, but still make the same amount of money. So you can imagine what's happened to their profits. So you're talking less people to generate more profit, which gives you that security. So if things do get a bit tight, you're still going to be making money. Whereas 360, I think, is on the edge a lot. There's for the really good 360s that Gav just mentioned, 300 to 500, great, awesome. How many of those are there?
They're few and far between. They're few and far between. And I'd rather have 25, 30 people doing 120.
Yeah, 120, right? Well, and especially with the demands that people make as 360s, because that's another drawback. They make these big demands because they think they can do all of these things. You should, when you build a business, build dependency into it. It's very important that people know they only are successful because there are other things here that work. And if you go, we're losing a function and we'll replace that function. If you're a 360, you lose a revenue stream. Off it goes into the distance. And very often, they don't take the clients, but the clients don't stay with you, which is a weird thing, really. God knows where the money goes. So I think that they're layered are much more robust, much safer businesses, much more profitable, which gives you a lot more, I think, when you go into, we never, during the early recession of 1991 and 1999 in IT, we didn't lose anyone, really. We didn't make as much profit, I'll admit, but we didn't lose anyone, which meant that when we came out, God blimey, we didn't half go, because we hadn't dismantled our team. With 360s, you're on the edge all the time, especially with the demands that they come out with. You've got to admit, some of the demands for pay, you just think...
Yeah, of course. But I suppose I've got to challenge you on that, Mike. I've got to challenge you on that. So we're talking about dependencies or key person dependencies. If in a business, you've only got 2 to 3 people who are either doing, you call it strategic BD, one of those leaves, one of those gets ill, one of those goes through a difficult time, how are the rest of the people in your layered function then getting fed?
Okay. So strategic BD, weirdly, this is going to sound kooky, it's easier than tactical BD.
Okay, but either or. Let's say you have 2 to 3 people that are just doing that.
Yeah, okay. I take your point. What I'm saying is, it's easy, so you can get other people to do it relatively quickly. You could take someone who's average at BD or average at anything and teach them to do this. I could teach Kirsty to do it. I don't mean to be rude, Kirsty, but strategic BD is very simple to do. Takes less time and it's easier than having to build up a load of skill and knowledge and experience to track down vacancies, to get on a call.
I've got to disagree with you. I don't like strategic BD is at CEO, CFO, CTO level.
I have a slightly different viewpoint of Mike to explain it. So essentially, strategic BD a lot of the time is about creating a process or creating an innovative way to start and develop a relationship, essentially. So to do that, you spend time testing it, you spend time with proofing groups, you spend time figuring out direct wording on written material, something. There's a big amount of time that goes into it. But once you've created that strategic BD, almost mini product, essentially, you could think of it as, that product can run, it has a life cycle normally of what, Mike, like a year, 18 months, 2 years?
Can be much longer than that. Yeah, we're still using stuff that was.
So the premise is that, yes, creating them would take somebody who is essential. Normally, as Mike says, it's the owner. And then what would happen if that person is, as you say, ill, the under the bus file we all deal with, or that person leaves, again, it's normally the owner, so they don't tend to leave. what would happen is the people in that level below could run those strategic BD products, if you want to think of them as small products, for any number of time in order for you to replace it. So that level of safety is there because these things are not short period. We are talking very long term and very long life cycle.
Yeah, there's two other things about that, really. That's very true, Kirsty, and thank you for that. By the way, if anyone's interested, Kirsty will pop this in the comments. We ran a webinar. You won't be able to watch it unless you've got the URL for it, but we ran a webinar, a full, was it 90 minutes, Kirsty?
Yeah, it was.
90 minutes on strategic BD. So if anybody wants to understand what it is, because we can't explain that now in the few minutes that we have. If anybody wants that, we can look. You can look in the niche, or you can ask, and we'll send it to you. You can have a look. But I think that there's a tool about the definition, isn't really. Strategic BD just means you're targeting higher value clients, not necessarily the level you go in at, although you're right, tend to go in at a higher level. But the other thing that I've noticed is that if you look at a 360 group, you've got some people who are naturally better at business development. They just like it and they're better at it and they don't mind doing it. And you've got another bunch not so keen on it. They're better with clients or perhaps better with candidates. If you ever found yourself in a position where your strategic business developer, the guy that did it, the leader, say, was just decided to go to Australia for 6 months, it's dead easy to take one of those people that quite like 360 business development to train them up. Literally, it's like I do projects of 4 hours. That's what it takes. All it is. Honestly, it's so simple because it's all about tools and processes. It's not about individuals. Yeah, you've got to have the right people for sure. If you choose the wrong people, they'll crash and burn, particularly if they're too transactional. But if you've got people in your business who you feel have got a more bent towards hunting, put them in a strategic business development framework, whoosh, off they go. It's amazing.
But they don't have the relationship. So I understand what you mean from a product point of view. Totally get it. Understand. They don't have the relationship with those people, and there might be another recruitment business.
Well, the job will be to build a relationship, because the other thing with strategic BD, which is weird, is that there's a belief that strategic BD just is an approach. I'd urge you, if you're not you, Max, but if you're confused over this, just watch the webinar. Right, it's just easy to do that. But it's an approach. With tactical BD, it's give us a piece of work now, because that's what it is. Give us a piece of work. I've got this candidate. Do you want to see him? Give us something to work on. Or I know that someone's just left in your department. Can I, whatever it is. It's about a piece of work now. With strategic BD, it's very much, I don't know whether the way in which we do things is the way in which you do things. But if they do, then we'll wait as long as it takes to do business together. My job is just to make sure that we match on how we do things. And that's why it's so powerful, because the number of people that do that out there is tiny. I bet you do, Max, but it's tiny. Most people want a piece of work, because BD to them means a transaction. That's what it means. I've got to get a piece of work. We don't care about that. 3 weeks, 3 months, or 3 years. But the weird thing is, if you go in on that stance, like I'm not in a rush, I'm not desperate, I just want to know if it's right, you stand a greater chance of getting a vacancy if you do that than if you go in actually looking for a vacancy. It's the damnedest thing, really. But building relationships, you're quite right. They would have to start from scratch with new people, but it doesn't take long.
I do have a question actually for you, Max, around this relationship element. Is, as a business owner, particularly if you've got to a certain size, we see a lot of yo-yos, right? We see a lot of people who've grown and then they lose people and they go down. And for us, some of the things that we really encourage our business owners to deal with is safety. A business that is safe and can be protected. Now, from my point of view, having one singular person have the only relationship with that client makes that very unsafe, because if that person leaves, if they go and take their own person, if they get ill, if anything like that happens, there is no backup in order to keep that client on within the company. And I just wonder, what would you say about that with a 360 model?
So particularly for us, the way we've approached things is we have people or individuals specialize in perm, and they specialize in interim or contract. So we have a buddy up system. So every single client meeting, every single client interaction, whether it's a Teams, face-to-face, coffee, lunch, dinner, you are buddying up with somebody from interim or perm. So it's two-pronged. So we have 2 recruiters. I'll use myself and my colleague Rizwan, who I've worked with for 10 years as an example. We go on every client meeting together. So if something's happened to me or vice versa, Riz is there in place to pick up that relationship.
I think I love the buddy system. We used it in the 90s. So all of our, it was called a pod leader and a deputy. Well, it wasn't called that, but that's what it's called now. And I'm a big fan of that. You've got to tie them in with shares, and they are effectively, the pod leaders are effectively the strategic business developers. They're not really going to go anywhere, to be honest. But the downside is, if you've got two people working very close together, one does perm and one does contract, do you genuinely think that just one of them would leave if they were going to go and set up on their own? Or do you think both of them would leave, and then you're basically losing two revenue streams and the client goes with them?
I think this is a different topic altogether. I think there's so much risk to being a recruitment owner at any given time. I think the only thing that you can do is have the right measures, strategies in place to retain your people.
I think that's true, but like we were talking about off air, I think when you set up a business, because you and I are both good 360s, as most business owners are, if you're looking at a really good 360 in your business, within 2 to 3 years, there's a very, very good chance they're going to go, right? It's just that's statistically how it works. Just like everybody else is. Everybody watching this now who owns their own business probably was a very good 360 and probably worked for somebody else until they thought, you know what, can do this for themselves. And I think a lot of it, the motive for setting up business isn't necessarily just money. It's freedom, it's ego. There's a whole bunch of stuff that the company can't really do much about. And if you can't sell the business, there's no end to it. I had the advantage of being able to sell the business and told everybody, going to sell it, have some shares. And we gave away £3 million on the first sale to everybody in the business. And the people that were at the top made a lot of money and went on then to form their own businesses. So I had that kind of, well, why would you leave now? We're getting so close now. Didn't lose a single senior person in 10 years, not one. Amazing, really. And I think partly it was down because I was a fantastic manager. Okay, fair enough then. I wasn't, but we had a whole bunch of other stuff in there. But one of it was the fact that you're part of the business now. You're not going to go anywhere until we sell. Then we all make a load of dough. But I think if you're not prepared to stump up equity in the business, you can't compete with them leaving and getting equity in the business. What are you going to do? How are you going to do that? So, and I think you can't do that for everybody, but you can do it for senior strategic people. And then if people come and go underneath them, well, who cares? Look at someone like Michael Page. I don't know what their turnover of staff was. I'm sure maybe not them, but somebody was about 60%.
I thought 60, 70 was the number.
Right. But that's not the top. They don't go anywhere. They're okay. It's the people underneath. They come and go, and who cares? Because they're not 360 as much as they might say they are. They're just not. They're not built that way. They're built in a very layered model, and it works really well. I think the danger period is about 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
We've been running the business that long. Yeah, sorry.
I have to interrupt because I've just realised we've got 3 minutes left of the show. I've got really into this. I was really listening to everybody. So in a second, I'm going to come to Max and Mike about what you should do if you want to either run a 360 or a layered model. What's the first thing you can do? But before then, Mike, can we talk about our next show, which I believe is about niche?
Well, you could bring it up and then we can see it then, can't you, really? There you go. Yeah, we're going to talk about niche markets because I think with the way the markets are going right now and the year that we're going to have this year, and God knows what is going to happen next year after the election. I mean, really, no one knows, do they? Who knows? I think niche is something that's very powerful, and we won't mention his name. Maybe we can get someone on the show that Max has mentioned to us who's used niche in a very, very, very powerful way to make a lot of money. And maybe we can get him on, maybe we can't, maybe we get him on another time. But I think that this idea of niche is really powerful and I want to drill down into it. Okay,
very excited about that. Now, Max, you have definitely done a good job on 360s today. So if somebody's watching this and they're still thinking, 360 is my thing, what would you say is the biggest thing that they need to do in order to run a successful 360 shop?
Invest in their people and actually fully invest in the 360 people that they're bringing in.
That's the wrong tip, Bob.
Oh, sorry.
If you are going to go all in with 360, make sure people have got the right motivation, they're incentivized the right way, the right remunerations in process, the right training and development plans are there. And you have people in the business that are leading from the front day in, day out, because where it falls down is you've not got the right leadership or managers that are doing it, or they're just sat there. So it's invest in your people is absolutely massive.
Well, I'm lucky because I think that as well.
Okay.
So I get two. I get that one because I agree entirely with Max on that. I don't care what kind of company you have. If you don't invest in your people and manage them properly, you ain't going to be successful, really, I think. Fair enough.
And my choice for layered, they're like layered model sounds like what I want.
Yeah. Well, the first thing you have to do is you have to assess the strengths and weaknesses and preferences. It doesn't say preferences there, but and preferences of the people that you have, because naturally a lot of people are okay with clients, some are okay with candidates. One of our clients has got the same level for consultants and resources. So a junior resources gets exactly the same deal as a junior consultant. Doesn't matter. What's your preference? Do you want to deal with candidates or do you want to deal with clients? Makes no odds to us, really. You choose because it's the same. And then where it goes wrong normally is business development, because people aren't that interested in BD, or not everybody is, because it's scary and hard and yada, 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 right? And I think that's your assessment, is figure out what you've got, because that's going to tell you where to go from there on in.
Fantastic. Okay, guys, this has been a really lively show. I've really enjoyed it. I don't know about you both, but it's all about me. It's my show anyway. But I've really enjoyed it. So I want to, first of all, say thank you to everybody who's watched and everybody who's given us a comment and a question. I know there was one that I didn't manage to get answered, so I'm going to send it to Mike and Max, and they'll respond to you in the comments. So I do apologise for that. I want to say a great big thank you to Max. Thank you very much for coming on today and talking about 360.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. It's nice. It's nice to see someone put Mike in his place. No, and I, of course, have to say thank you to Mike for being here. So thanks, Mike.
It was a pleasure, and I'll echo those thanks. Thank you, Max, for coming on the show. It was really good. I really enjoyed that, and done in the best possible taste. And I suppose thank you for Kirsty for running it. It is the Kirsty Ames show, after all. I think we all know that. So.
It is my show. Okay, well, we'll see you in 2 weeks to talk about niching.